Welcome back to Switch to Linux with Western Mountain Web, talking about WordPress tutorials. So today we're just going to do a very brief introduction to WordPress plugins. We're not going to go a whole lot into detail here, and a lot of what we said about plugins also applies to themes. You can purchase third-party plugins from places like ThemeForest. We'll have a plugin store. And you can get a lot of free plugins. There are a lot of free plugins you get that have upgraded pro features. One of the challenges I find in WordPress is sometimes it's very difficult to know which plugins are truly free, which ones are free, except they don't work unless you pay for the premium plugin. I really wish that WordPress itself would push down some recommendations or standards so that people understand what we get. But regardless, we're going to look at plugins. So a plugin is designed to extend the functionality of WordPress. A lot of the way plugins work, you can put a plugin into a theme and have that functionality as part of the theme, or you can utilize a plugin. The reason those would be different, and the reason they usually are different, is if you happen to have a site that you want to change the themes around or anything like that, then what you need to be able to do is you need to be able to maintain all the functionality of the site even if the theme changes. And that's why we make that distinction of the plugins, to make sure that that the plugins are a separate entity. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and show you what the screen looks like. So here I have logged into our dashboard. I have on another tab, I have my WordPress site over here. Probably within a couple of weeks here, we're going to actually start turning this into something good. This is just, we're still on those fundamental concepts. We don't want to jump too far into this too fast, or else we might very well lose you. So the plugins are managed on the plugin menu down here on the main menu on the left. So if you click on this, you'll see that I have one plugin installed. This is the plugin I had to install to make the theme actually work. So that's the only reason we have a plugin. Now on the default WordPress install, if you'll remember, it comes pre-installed with the ASCII.NET and with Hello Dolly, which I deleted both of those. And you should delete those. You should never have a plugin hanging around that's inactive, and you should never activate a plugin that you do not absolutely need for your site functionality. Remember that every line of code, every plugin is an attack vector that a hacker could potentially utilize to try and compromise your site. And now some of them, most plugins are generally not going to be huge hacker targets, but your major ones that you purchase from theme stores, these are major targets. And that's why I still do not recommend purchasing a whole lot of plugins from stores. If you specifically need some functionality, go for it. I've used some of those, but I'll tell you that the two huge plugins that exist out there that are used in a lot of WordPress themes that are constantly being hacked and are very difficult to keep up to date are Revolution Slider and what's the other one? I can't forget. I'm believing the name of the other one there. It is one of your content builders. Visual Composer. So Visual Composer and Revolution Slider, if those are included in your theme, you should really look to change your themes to something else, because those two plugins, I have seen more WordPress sites hacked because those plugins are not up to date and they're hard to keep up to date because you have to keep on buying them over and over and over. And while that is certainly a good, a good investment for some core basic functionality, a slider can be accomplished many ways without having a plugin that's constantly being hacked. And so with that respect, look for various other types of plugins. So to add plugins, again, everything that we talked about with themes would also apply here to your plugins. So you can upload the theme directly with the FTP server. You can upload a plugin that you have downloaded just by clicking the Add New and click the Update File button up here, Upload Plugin. Or you can search for plugins over here. So which plugins would I generally recommend? Well, there's a few excellent ones. SEO is big with a lot of people. There's two major SEO plugins. One of those is Yoast. And Yoast is my least favorite of them, but it is a good plugin. I will admit it is a good plugin. I prefer All-in-One. All-in-One SEO Pack is the plugin that I would generally use. So those are your two major plugins if you're concerned with how your site looks. we'll go ahead and just push the install button. Now remember, if you're using a standard if you're using a standard cPanel account, you will not have to mess with the passwords nearly as much as I do here. This is just how I have my my server built. So you'll see it's now installing your plugin. Once it's done installing, you will then change to the activate button. So go ahead and activate that. Now, once you have activated a plugin, some plugins are going to add new menus. So this one, All-in-One SEO Pack, will add a new menu. Sometimes it will add its various settings inside your settings panel. So you have to keep in mind that when you install a plugin, they kind of behave in different ways. It just depends on how the plugin is set. All right, let's go ahead and go back to the plugins page. Let's talk about some other good plugins to have. Another plugin that is generally a good one to install is Contact Form 7. This will allow you to do contacts. Of course, I am on the search functionality. That searches for plugins that are installed. Okay, here's a tip. If you have to use the search functionality to search for installed plugins, you probably have too many plugins. So Contact Form 7 is one of the 2 top contact form systems, and the other one, I'm forgetting the drawing a blank on the other contact form. I generally do not ever use the other one. I just completely stick with Contact Form 7. It's easy, it's customizable, it's extendable, and it's well documented. That's why I use it. Now you can see that there are extensions to it. So for example, if you need to save the data that is being added to your forms, usually Contact Form 7 just allows you to go out there and it'll allow you to get out there, and it will allow you to just send an email out. But if you happen to need to keep that data, there are contact forms that will allow you to save that data. So you'd look for Contact Form Database, which is going to push the information in. So just have to find it here. Contact Form 7 Database add-on. So this one here, what this is going to do is any database entries on your contact form is going to add them also to the database, and will give you the ability to search those things. So if you need to keep track of the information that's put in, you can do that. Now, if you want some type of shopping site, install WooCommerce. WooCommerce is a great plugin. The default for WooCommerce, I don't know how it's in the search functionality. Why is it not showing up? That is so weird. Am I spelling something wrong? It should be like the very first thing on any search anywhere close to Woo. There it is. Okay. So WooCommerce is an excellent store if you're wanting to sell products. I mean, if you have 1 or 2 little products, you might just use a simple PayPal integration. I know I have a couple sites that I've built in the past where I use a really simple PayPal shopping cart. But for the most part, any amount of product sales, you're probably just going to want to install WooCommerce. The good news is WooCommerce is very well documented. It's very secure. I've never had a site hacked on the basis of WooCommerce itself. And it is free for basic functionality. The downside is most of the advanced features in WooCommerce are going to cost you extra money, and we're getting back to that same exact model where you're paying for stuff every year. That isn't quite as bad if you're talking about extending your store, but it is bad if you're talking about something as simple as sliders on a site, especially since I've never really seen WooCommerce, a WooCommerce hack, even a WooCommerce plugin get hacked, but some of those other ones are huge hack targets. Kitty wants to come up and say hi.
Hello everybody, I hope you're enjoying our WordPress tutorials.
All right, so WooCommerce is great. So if you are going to add products, we'll go ahead and do that. I'm not going to install that now. Maybe I'll do some separate tutorials just on setting up WooCommerce. The basic integration is free for if you want to have mail-in payments or a simple PayPal integration. If you want to use anything else, Stripe or custom gateways and things like that, not only do you need to get a coder involved, but you will also be looking at buying extra plugins. But just make a decision for your own business if that's worth it or not. All right. So those are some plugins. Of course, there are some security plugins. You might also need like database cleanup plugins. Let's do cleanup. What a database cleanup plugin will do is, if you do a lot of edits and updates to your site, then you'll have a lot of revisions, a lot of other things out there that are just will slow the database down. The smaller your database is, the better your site's going to run. So what I like, the one I prefer, is this optimized database after deleting revisions. So basically what this is going to do is just allow you to come in here every now and again and just install, basically you just run this database optimizer. It's just going to clean up your database, make sure it's optimized, things like that. Now you might want some caching plugins. So there's a couple different caching plugins. Let's go for cache. Now, as I had said, if you install WordPress through one of the simple installers, these are starting to install things like the Super Cache plugin and the Total Cache plugin and all these. I do not recommend installing those for this very reason, that you never want to install your caching plugin until your site is about ready to deploy. You want to be on your QA stage before you even think about installing a caching plugin. And that is why it is the stupidest thing in the world that WordPress in these one-click installers are coming now with a caching plugin pre-installed. It messes things up. It messes with the developers. It messes with the people who don't know how to develop and they're trying to develop things. It adds extra stuff to the database you don't need in there right now. And it basically, it becomes a pain to clean up and get rid of it. And it's a caching plugin I'm not sure I want to use. I think it's like WordPress Total Cache or something. I forget which one it is. But it is not the one that I would recommend. I'm not a huge fan of the caching plugins in general. It's good. It's W3 Total Cache is the one that's coming pre-installed on a lot of things. Because of that alone, I switched entirely to WP Super Cache because I do not like it when they're trying to force their way in with simple installers and stuff like that. So I just simply stopped using W3 Total Cache. Now, if you happen to be running an SSL site, you want to run some plugins for SSL. And so just type in SSL. This really simple SSL is one of the better ones that I've seen out there. This is basically what it's going to do is it's going to go through your whole site and make sure that any elements loading from the WordPress database are being loaded in HTTPS instead of HTTP. So that's going to get rid of any padlock issues that you might have on deploying your website. Now, that will not fix anything in your theme. So if you have a poorly coded theme, you are not going to... this will not solve those problems. A poorly coded theme would be where someone's throwing in absolute links, maybe links to development servers, which is a big no-no, but they're basically throwing in a whole lot of stuff. Now, the way to make your theme, if your theme works correctly, and you really wouldn't have a way of knowing this unless you know the code, but what you'd want to do is the first step to making your site run on HTTPS is if you come down here to General, you'll see that you have here the WordPress URL and the site address. All you would need to do to start is put an S in front of each of these. Any resource that loads with a relative path is automatically going to be loading in HTTPS now. That's the way to do it. If you're having problems with your theme not loading resources correctly after you add this S to this general settings, then you have to go in and fix your theme. All right. We're not going to save any changes there. Let's see. Let's have a quick look at some security plugins. So there are some excellent security plugins out there. They could be anything from plugins that are going to go ahead and search your theme files to make sure there's no changes. Now those will not work as well if you have a custom built theme because it checks it according to a theme repository. It looks at your theme files compared to other theme files in repositories. So the two top here ones, these are the two top ones. You'd want to use one of these. WordFence is a great plugin. You can set how many times somebody attempts to log in before it locks them out for a period of time. You can pay a premium to get a pro version, which has a lot more protection features. the all-in-one, anytime somebody logs into your site or attempts to log into your site, it's going to send you an email. And so that's actually a pretty useful functionality. It gives you a good email log of the interaction, especially if you have a lot of different people going back and forth and you want to be able to check, who's logged in from what. So those are some of the good security plugins that I would recommend. If you want images, the Nextgen Gallery, I always spell this wrong. I know exactly what the plugin is, but I thought it was Nextgen Gallery. Apparently I'm still spelling it wrong. Let me just do photo galleries. Oh, I should find it. Where'd you go? Nextgen. It should be Nextgen. There you go. There it is. So the Nextgen Gallery is the best plugin that I've ever found for if you want to run any advanced photo galleries. Basically, you're running sliders on your site. It has a lot of functions. It keeps up with the time. It's regularly updated. It's very compatible. Now, there was this, you will, if you do some research, you'll find that about a month or two ago, there was a big security problem in an old version, which as soon as it was identified, it was quickly patched. In fact, there have not been any known hacks to it that I know of. It's just there was a potential security hole. So just make sure you're always updating your plugins. But the Nextgen Gallery is an excellent plugin to enable you to add some photo galleries. Then, of course, you want some backup plugins. Now, a word about backup plugins. I do not necessarily support any WordPress backup plugin because they are all very limited. Whether it is chops your database into tons of little pieces, or whether it just takes the backup of your content files, which really that's all you need. All you need to restore a WordPress install is you need your WP content folder. As long as you have your WP content folder, everything else is just WordPress core. So a lot of your backup plugins save some time by going in and just taking the WP content folder, and it'll take copies of the database. The downside is you have to reinstall the core and then add that plugin and then add the database and hope that it works. That's a lot of hoping it works. Now, of these, the best ones that I have seen, Duplicator has come on my radar in the last few months. Duplicator is absolutely awesome. It's going to be limited if you have a huge site. Now, take in mind, and we'll talk more about this when we do a lot more direct contact on media management, but a lot of people mess up their WordPress sites because they're just snapping a photo with their camera and trying to upload it directly onto the site. You'll either get a timeout error, a file too large error, and then you try and do all sorts of weird stuff, not knowing exactly what you're doing. And then eventually you cram media files into the site, and you got this media file that can be printed as a poster. You're trying to fit into a little tiny gap. Bad coding. But if you do that kind of stuff, Duplicator's not going to work for you. If you know that you need an image that's 100 by 100 pixels, get an image editor and learn how to crop your images to the proper size before you upload them to the media library in WordPress. Otherwise, you're going to have files that are way too large. Any backup plugin is going to have a problem. Any PHP server is going to have a problem, and you're going to have issues. So always make sure you're streamlining your site, particularly in the form of media. But that being said, I absolutely love the Duplicator plugin. Now, this is actually not specifically meant to be a backup plugin, but I find that it's the best backup plugin there is, because it will literally take a copy of everything and deploy it anywhere else, even changing the domain name, which is frequently difficult. And so the Duplicator plugin is absolutely awesome. Updraft Plus, you'll see, is one of the higher rated ones. I have never been a huge fan of Updraft Plus. I just found that it uses a lot of weird system resources in the back, and it will really only run if some other user is on the site, which means it's using other users' resources to run itself, and that can be a problem. The other ones that I have used in the past are WP Back It Up, which is this one down here. WP Backup is one of those ones that will just take the WP contents folder. It used to do a whole lot better job. It stopped doing a good job about 6 months ago when it started cutting the database into tons and tons of little pieces. It's the worst thing you can have happen. Okay, the absolute best way to make a backup of your WordPress install is to take a copy of your files and take a manual copy of your database. Nothing else is going to help. Now, you'll see that there are WP database backup things. Again, a lot of these, and I've not used this one directly, but a lot of these, it cuts your database into tons of little pieces. It makes it pretty difficult to actually reinstall. And if you can't get the exact version that your last backup was made for, then, you know, you're not going to work. But the next major problem all of these plugins have is that it will take a copy of it and it stores it on the server. And that's not where you want your backup. You do not want your backup on the very server the website is. Now, WP Backup and I believe Updraft Plus will allow you to push that backup to a Google Drive, a Dropbox, an S3 bucket, an FTP, an email, anything. Those are good options. Those are better options. So if you are using a backup plugin, make sure you're using one that you can tie into those other third-party services, whichever ones you like to use. Me personally, I don't mess with any backup plugins. I use my FileZilla that we've been using. I manually pull a copy of the files off, and then I just go in on PHPMyAdmin, export the database. Perfect. That's how you do a backup. That's how you do a backup. Then all you need to do is just upload the database, upload the files, and you're back online. Take a little bit more time, maybe a little bit, but not all that much. So that's kind of my take on your backup plugins. Again, same ways to install a plugin. You can upload it by uploading a zip file you've downloaded. You can put on search for it in the repositories here, or you can unzip it and drop it into your plugins directory. Let's go ahead and show you where that plugins directory happens to be. Here, so we're not on that, and log into that. Oop, I think I pushed cancel. I have a tendency to push cancel on that rather than anything else. All right, so if you come over here, here's your main WordPress directory. You see WP admin, WP content, WP includes. So every file, actually there is one other important file that you have to make working, and that is your WP config file. So taking a copy of that too. But what I do is I just come in here, copy all of this, and just move it over to my backup location. That's what I do. And then you need to do the same on PHPMyAdmin. All right. So down here, when you click in the WP config, you'll see uploads. This is where any of your images and things get uploaded to. So you see those are where our images correspond to. You'll see the upgrade folder, which is generally empty. That is used for when the site is running upgrades. It will download the copy into the upgrade folder, deploy the upgrades, and then it deletes everything out of the folder. So leave that folder there. It's usually empty. Of course, this is your themes, where you drop your themes to, and this is your plugins. So all you need to do is manually come in here, drop in plugins, and then what you have to do, if you manually drop in the plugin, it will be deactivated. You just need to come back to your main plugins menu and hit the activate. There'll be an activate option. So you see it says deactivate here. If I deactivate something, you'll see that now says activate. So that's what you need to do, is come in and activate it. All right. So that is your real brief summary on your plugins. So hopefully that that was helpful for you, and you will be able to come in and do a little bit more work with your WordPress. And within the next couple weeks here, we're going to start actually making this site look good. I just need to double check if there's any other topics. If there are other specific WordPress questions you have, leave them below in the comments. Again, if you would like to help support what we do at Switch to Linux, you can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/TomM. And there are also Amazon links down below that you can use those to help support us as well. So thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux and to WordPress.